What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really exciting review for you. This is probably one of the world's best bind and fly quads out there in the 3-inch class category, and that's a huge claim from me, but it's running the DJI Digital system and the camera is absolutely clear. If you're brand new getting into the hobby and you already bought yourself the DJI goggles and you're looking for something that will just bind up to your radio, your Taranis, your Spectrum radio, Futaba, FlySky, multi-protocol radio, whatever's out there in the universe, you can bind this up to it and go have an HD experience. And this is the quad that the DJI guys have been wanting for around 5 years. They would come up to me and ask me to check out my analog goggles. They'd look in my analog goggles and they'd say, oh man, that really kind of looks like crap compared to my DJI Mavic phone view here, and I would explain that your phone is running on the OcuSync or the Wi-Fi, so it does have a really nice image, but it's not a real-time image like we need to fly FPV because we're doing high speeds and we need that real-time view. Well, fast forward to the end of 2019 and we have a whole bunch of bind and fly quads coming out. Bind and fly meaning that we can just bind it up to the radio and set up the switches inside Betaflight and go fly. And what's awesome about this is that while it is priced around the $375 price point, think about this for a second. This DJI Air module, the camera and the Air module back here, together that's $179. So subtract $179 retail price from the price of the quad itself, and you know, you have a fairly competitive price for the quad. You're paying for the quad, yes, but you're also paying retail for the Air module on board, the DJI transmitter. So you can go out and do your HD experience. But so if you look at it in that light, it's really not a bad price. But I love the design. I also love how lightweight this quad is because we're not carrying any action camera up there. This little guy's recording 1080p at 60 frames per second, and it looks really, really nice. And we're gonna do a flight test on this quad. I'm gonna show you how it flies. Also, one other note for you guys, if you're buying this after October 4th, it's going to be an F7 board on the flight controller, and this will handle up to a 4S battery. If you want to have this quad under 250 grams and not have to register it, also, cha-ching, you don't have to do that. You can run a 4S 550 battery and have it under 250 grams because this is an ultralight. And we're going to talk about everything in this review. We're going to talk about the pros and cons, the way it flies, the durability, and the tune on here, and just the overall experience. I think you guys are going to love it. So let's just go ahead out and fly. I'm going to do some line of sight because you have to hear these motors. They motor down on this design. Traditionally on 3-inch, they've been doing 1408s, and the 1408 motors are great, but they just kind of seem to be a battery sucker, and you have to use something over the 850 milliamp mark. You have to use something as big as this one, or even a 1050 to be able to handle 1408 motors. It draws a lot of milliamp out of the battery really quickly, and they're super high powered, but they've motored down on this design, and they put a little smaller motors on here, which allows us to have a smoother flying quad on some really nice HQ props, and it gives us a longer flight time. So you can get in upwards of 4 minutes depending on if you want to go up to something like a 4S 850. So I believe you could even get longer than that, but I was showing you just a little bit of freestyle capability and some just general flying with that dead cat style as well. No camera in the view, so record your cinematic videos, do your freestyle. This quad has everything you could possibly want, and it's ultra light. So let's go head out now and let's do the flight test line of sight, and then we'll do some FPV, and after that we'll come back in and we'll check this quad out a little closer on the bench. You guys are gonna love this. All right guys, let's go ahead and fly this line of sight. I want you to see and hear how smooth it is before we do some FPV with the DJI system. The motors on here are a lot quieter than the 1408s they usually put on these 3-inch quads. So what that means is we get a little bit longer flight time. They didn't kind of motor up on these and make it a powerhouse. It's nice because you don't see any props in the view. It's that dead cat style. And It's a really efficient power system on here. Nice and quiet, but power when you need it. So the cool thing is that I can kind of fly it in spots where people don't really hear it. It's not quite as loud as some other 3-inch quads. There's some dudes over there playing frisbee golf, but they barely even notice this thing over here. Especially when I'm at cruising throttle, which is like right around 40 to 50%. Little punch out on 4S. You can fly it on 3S too, it'll just be more mild. But the props on here seem good. So let's go ahead and do a little bit of FPV with it. I want to show you how smooth this quad flies, and a little bit of aerobatic stuff, but not a whole lot. We're just going to take it easy today and really enjoy this DJI system on here. But as always, I'm going to show you a little bit, tiny bit, little bit of some freestyle. Here we go. Okay guys, let's go ahead and do the flight of the year. This is the DC3. I say flight of the year because just settle back and enjoy how beautiful this camera system looks. This is where we've wanted to be for years, and we're finally here. And I gotta give it to iFlight, because iFlight's one of those companies that is just making bind and fly after bind and fly with this DJI gear on there. And you know, if you consider in the factor of the cost of the camera system and the VTX, you know, that camera system and the air module itself is $179. So you're paying an average price for this 3-inch quad when you're done and paying for that DJI video system on board. So if you're wanting to fly this, you're gonna have to buy that air module system anyway. And having it on a nice frame like this, where it's a dead cat style 3-inch, it's super portable. You could send it with crossfire up a mountain, down a mountain. You can do a little bit of medium range flying with it, and you can do some cinema stuff, because look how jello free this video is. The onboard DVR for DJI is just blowing pretty much any other HD system out of the water. I've tested quite a few of them now. I have not tested Fat Shark's Bite Frost yet, but there's some mixed opinions on that one. Everyone that has flown DJI seems to be saying that DJI is clearly the winner. My only beef with the Fat Shark Bite Frost system is that it does not have an onboard DVR on the VTX. So since you don't have onboard DVR, my question is it going to be kind of interference free? When we're recording DVR from the goggles, using the DJI goggles, you can see that interference in there, and it comes through as like pixelization on the screen, kind of like a Minecraft type thing. But that's what I'm concerned about with the Bite Frost. But with this system, you get a really nice flawless view from the onboard DVR, and that's where I think it's really worth the money. But my first battery went pretty well so far, and I'm blown away with how awesome the fall leaves look out today. They're kind of these like golden color leaves everywhere, and the DJI system really shows off a lot of the color, especially in the fall. This is the perfect time to demo this system for you. But it's amazing how clear everything is when you're flying it. So now I'm on my second battery, and we're just going to go up kind of nice and high for you and show you a little higher altitude. And it really is a jello free experience with the DC3. I don't see a lot of jello, except for at the really high end of the throttle and maybe on some of the really hard turns. You get a little bit of prop wash and some shudder in there. And I can't even explain to you how well the goggles look. The screen in the goggles looks amazing. Most people that have been flying analog FPV for 5 years that I've known, some of the real old school guys, they put on the DJI goggles for the first time, and the first words out of their mouth is, "Oh wow." And that's exactly what I said when I put them on for the first time. I was a skeptical person about these goggles, you know, whether we were going to be able to freestyle them. But today I'm running 700 milliwatt right here, and as far as close proximity goes, it's cool because you can see good enough to really get in there like this, fly close to the ground. It really makes some turns at fairly high speeds. And I almost kissed a pole right there. That would have not been good. So we're going to go up a little bit higher now, and man, just check out the view. It's just amazing. Let me come down a little bit, back through these trees, and down this beautiful road. And the DC3, you know, the flight characteristics of this quad are really floaty. It's kind of slow and chill even on a 4S battery. And man, I took out some leaves on that one. I almost crashed. But you can slow it down enough to where it feels like a tiny whoop type quad, something with prop guards like the Mega B, and you can do stuff like this. And you can get away with a lot with a little 3-inch quad. And you can also go pretty fast with this quad. You can get ripping pretty quick. The 4S852, I have to mention that you can get well over 4 minutes flight time because they decided to use the right motors on here. I'm so happy they did, because the 1408s would have just kind of been overkill. Those are great for like a true hardcore 3-inch freestyle quad or 3-inch racer, but 1408s just would have been way too much motor and given us a lot of power and speed, but not a very long flight time. Around the 3-minute flight time. But this baby will power loop, no problem. Check that out. And handled itself pretty well at the bottom end of that loop. Not bad at all. So I'm impressed with both factors, the freestyle factor and the cinema factor. Because in the first part of this review, I was kind of just, my first 2 batteries was really taking it easy. There's a little bit of shudder right there on that hard turn. And at the bottom right here, nope. Got away with none. I'll just back around out here into the big field. Really nice system. So there were some jets passing over my head, and they left some cool, what some people would call chemtrails. Don't everybody get all paranoid at once. But they look really cool to film. Just playing around with the lines. And now coming back down close to the ground, let's see how this handles a dive. Pretty good. I won't say that this quad flies like a 5-inch, but it does feel quite comfortable on the sticks. Nice and smooth. And this is just much more interesting drone video to me than your standard Mavic 2 video. I know you can go into like airplane mode on the Mavic 2, but honestly you're not going to be taking the kind of chances with a Mavic 2 you would with a freestyle quad or a race drone. Something of this caliber with carbon frame. You can get a new frame from iFlight, a new DC3 frame. I'll try to put a link down below for that. I believe it's around $30, so it's really a cheap quad to fly after you have the electronics, of course. But I'm impressed with it, and I honestly think that the DC3 is definitely like going to be quad of the year for the 3-inch category. I haven't flown anything in the 3-inch category quite as fun as this and clean and clear as this all year. I think the only close runner up to this system that has an analog system on there might be Diatone's 369. The 369 was also a banger. And as far as experience goes, this one is like blowing me away because of the clarity. And that's partially due to DJI's work. $19 million worth of R&D will get you this type of experience. I can even see that there's no fencing there. I can scoot between poles out in the field. And I've talked about this before, I take more chances now with the DJI system because I can see better. I can just see way clearer than my analog systems. Kind of like night and day, guys. But let's go ahead, let's put this quad down now, and let's get back to the studio and let's talk about this quad on the bench, and let me give you the full review that this quad deserves. Here we go, guys. Let's go ahead and talk about the DC3. Okay guys, welcome back from the flight test. So what did you think about that? Was that like the coolest flight test on the channel to date? I have to say I'm really in love with the DC3, and when I first saw it come on the Banggood website and on iFlight site, I just like kind of my jaw dropped and I couldn't stand it. I had to have it. It was one of those things. I've seen a lot of quads come on to the website, and you know, they spark my interest a little bit sometimes, but this was one of those quads that I found myself begging for, asking Banggood to send it to me, asking iFlight when they were going to send it, and they were a little bit hesitant at first because they wanted to make sure that they had everything right with this quad. And the original one that came out came with an F4. It came with a 35 amp ESC stack up in the front here. That's a succex-e version, and they've since upgraded it to the F7, the succex-d version, which is really nice. The F7 flies beautifully. I believe it does have dual gyros on board as well, so 2 gyros working harmoniously for your acro experience, and that's something that you can kind of level up to. If you're not flying acro yet, you can start out in stability mode. Betaflight does support several different flight modes as well for the new guys getting into this, but I think DJI is winning on a lot of levels here, and I've talked about this before. First off, they have a 720p 120 frame view for the real-time FPV feed back to the goggles, and the breakup is really actually not bad. It's just kind of a pixel wash over top of the screen momentarily, and if you're running 700 milliwatt and you're doing some sort of everyday flying, which is what 90% of us do, not flying long distances, miles out, you can set these quads up with long range receivers and fly out as far as your battery will take you out and back. And the DJI goggles will take you out there, believe it or not. They will take you a mile out with the right antennas. They do have some different antennas that you can upgrade to. The stock antennas won't take you out very far. But on this quad, they do have the right deal set up here. The microcam was a great choice for DJI. That format is probably one of the most popular formats in our community right now, so they didn't do a full-size camera, which really saved this system. Now, the air unit itself, the module in the back, is housed in between 2 pieces of TPU. This was 3D printed by iFlight, and iFlight is nice because they do include a lot of TPU additions with their bind and fly quads. You have another harness back here holding the 2 antennas coming off the back, and these are the stock DJI antennas. These come on the quad. I took a couple zip ties and zip tied them down, and then I'm running my battery on top, so I have my XT30 coming up the side here, and what I did was I tucked it underneath the strap like this and put a piece of extra Velcro down here because I don't like my battery flying off. I don't use the 3M tacky stuff. It just usually doesn't stick quite as well. We've got the 35 amp ESCs right there, and you do notice that the arms go sort of a little bit forward in the front, but they're pretty much straight. If you look at it head on, the great thing about this is that the HD1 from Rotor Riot, a lot of people complain that you can see the props in the view, and for an HD experience recording your videos, some of you guys don't want props in the view. I tend not to mind because I think it looks cool, but for a cinema type experience, you don't want props in there. So they've chosen to do this dead cat style, straight arm in the front and out the back as well. So really nice that they chose to do that. And they also did the same style on the DC5 that's coming up on the channel. I have a DC5 here for review. That's the larger 5-inch version of this quad. Now the props that they chose for this particular quad is the HQ 3x3x3s, and they're sort of heavier cord right here, a fatter cord right near the center of the hub, 2 bolts on top, and more of a tapered tip out to the outside edge, and a very low pitch prop. And what that does is it makes it just a little more efficient in the flight time. It's not quite as aggressive as a freestyle prop. I know some people would say this quad can freestyle all day long, but in my opinion, it's definitely more of a cruiser, more of a cinema type quad, and especially because the camera protection up front, it is pretty good, but the camera is sticking out a little bit up there, so you could break this camera in some heavy freestyle stuff. If you're taking a lot of chances and crashing a lot, if you're cruising, you're likely to crash less sometimes, depending on what gaps you're trying to hit. But also notice up front we have good side protection with a carbon wall, and we have a TPU mount on the inside of each carbon wall to give it more dampening in here, less vibration in our real-time view, which is awesome. A lot of the new iFlight frames have this TPU addition. You can see it sticking out right here and right here, and I just have a single bolt through right here. You can actually move the camera back just a little more if you bolt it from the bottom one right here and slide the camera back just a little bit further, giving you a little more protection. But I played around with it, and I think this is about probably the best camera protection that I could get. A little bit open up top here as well, so that's one thing to consider about this frame. So I always get kind of critical, but the top plate is super thin. It's around 1.5 millimeter or so. Very thin top plate, 3 millimeter unibody on the bottom. Really nice looking carbon fiber, and they do have a 16 by 16 option in the front here. If you were to burn out this stack and you wanted to replace it with something even lighter, you could do that. They also have a secondary 20 by 20 and 16 by 16 stack in the very back, so later on, if say something happened to your DJI module and you wanted to replace it with a traditional type setup long ways, you can do that as well. Have one stack up front and one in the back, and that is something that some people do in our hobby. But in the very back here, this is a floating setup for the air module. You've got your USB-C port on this side, and over on this side you have your micro SD card, which actually is pretty easy to access. You just stick your fingernail in there and pop out the SD card, and there you go. And the type of SD card you want to use is the SanDisk Extreme Plus. Those are the ones I use. 32 gigabyte will get you tons of 1080p video at 60 frames per second. I believe it goes in like this, and it's back in. Now, aside from a nice low pitch prop that they chose to put on here, the biggest secret sauce to this entire design, in my opinion, is the motor down option that they went with. They didn't blow this quad out of the air with the 1408 motors, the super tall beastie freestyle motor that you traditionally see on a 3-inch is not on this quad. They chose to motor down with the Zing 1404 motors. They are also a little bit lower kV. They're 4600 kV versus like a 5000 kV on some of the larger, even 6000 kV on some of the 3-inch quads. So I think that they meant to make this a cruiser, but at the same time they're still beastie enough on 4S that you can power loop trees, and you can do some pretty insane freestyle stuff if you want to. But I found myself kind of just holding back a little bit because I'm also running a DJI system on here, and I really didn't want to trash this camera doing some crazy stuff for you guys. But primarily what I wanted to show you is how smooth the quad is, and really showcase what I think this quad is all about, which is smooth flying and a really just beautiful cinema type experience. I think you could do a lot with this quad. So the quad on the scale is at 167.7 grams. That's well underneath the FAA registration point, so no need to register this quad. If you want to fly a smaller battery and get it under the 250 grams, you want to use something like a 650 milliamp battery. I don't have a 4S 650. I do have the 4S 450, and that's putting us up around 219.6 grams. So if you were to add a couple hundred milliamp extra, you're still going to get well under 250 G. So really, really nice that this quad falls underneath the registration category. So let's just do a summary of what we were talking about during this review and give you a final star rating on this quad. So starting off first with the hardware that they chose on here, I think pretty much 99% of the hardware on here is good. The frame is good. The TPU components are great. The flight controller that they chose to put on here, they upgraded it for you guys to the F7, the succex-d version, and the digital version, which is a plug-and-play version. It would just plug, the DJI unit would just literally plug straight into it, which is cool. And you can get an F4 version of that as well, but why go F4 when you can have an F7 straight out of the box? Is pretty nice. The motors that they chose to put on here, the power system is correct. They and I wouldn't have probably thought of this, but they motored down, which is absolute, 2 thumbs up win for a digital system. And the fact that it has duality, it can do freestyle or it can do cinema. So it kind of has the best of both worlds here for the price that you're getting. Some of these quads that come out can sort of only do cinema, because the moment that they start to do a little bit of freestyle, they kind of geek out. The flight controller trips up or will have a wobble. It happens a lot on the cine whoops and the power whoops, but we don't have any of those characteristics here. We just have a smooth flying quad. I think as far as the tune that's on the flight controller, it could be a little bit better. I could probably adjust those a little bit on the high end of the throttle, mainly because of the thick cord of this prop. It's given just a little bit of vibration at high throttle on the punch out. So I think that's one thing that could be improved on this quad. But the DJI Digital System is 5 stars all day. That is just one of my most best experiences this year so far in 2019. It's changed our hobby completely. And to see it in a small 3-inch format is great. The next thing that they got right was the dead cat style arms versus the Rotoride HD1, where you can see the props in the view. So no complaints for props in the view, and the video looks spectacular. What you can record with the onboard DVR, DJI is winning it by putting an onboard DVR. If there's an HD system out there and you're considering buying one, if it doesn't have an onboard DVR, in my opinion, it's kind of useless in a way, because even though you're having that HD experience, you don't get that nice clean video option, which you get from an onboard DVR. The Fat Shark Bite Frost, for example, I'm excited about that coming out. That's an analog HD type of system, but there's no onboard DVR, which is disappointing for Bite Frost. So DJI guys, you can rejoice. It's more expensive, but at the end of the day, it might not be after you gear up with the goggles that you need. So yeah, there's that. So I think that this quad is spectacular. I think that it's one of the best quads of the year, maybe even quad of the year in the 3-inch class category, and it's easily rated all the way around, hands down, at 5 stars. I think that iFlight needs to pay attention to their customers' needs as well, maybe including a little bit better hardware, because other companies out there like Diatone have really high quality hardware that they include with their props, for example. They always fit right, and they're pre-Loctited, which I think is fantastic. So take some notes from some of the other companies out there. iFlight, you're doing a great job on pretty much everything else. I think that this quad is an absolute winner. So you can pick one up for $350 if you already have the HD goggles. That's awesome. You're still going to get into our side of the hobby cheaper than you can if you went out and bought a $1,000 or $1,500 sort of little cinema drone with GPS return to home and all that, those bells and whistles. This is just a much more kind of fun and rewarding experience. So this is a great way to get into the hobby, or guys that are already experienced, you will absolutely love this quad. It is just amazeballs. I love it. But anyway, guys, thanks again for watching my reviews. I'm Justin Davis. Take care out there, and happy FPV, guys. I'll see you on the next one.